The court decided on a number of important cases. Here to break them down for us is NBC News Justice correspondent Pete Williams. Pete, good to see you. I want to start with one that you and I have spoken about in the past, a case about religious freedom out of Missouri.
Right. Well, it's definitely a win for the church. The question here is how broad a win is it for all churches around the country involving all taxpayer money? The Supreme Court said today when you have a program like the one in Missouri that gave grants to nonprofits to resurface their programs and make them safer, it's unconstitutional to leave churches out of that. It's religious discrimination. So that much we know. The question here, and the court really divided on, is does this mean that any restriction on giving taxpayer money to churches is struck down, or only when it's for programs that provide a public benefit? And that's where the court was divided today. But it is nonetheless one of the most important decisions on religious freedom in decades, and it could tee up further challenges to restrictions that have kept public money from going to, example, charter schools.
Pete, I want to ask you about two rulings on same-sex marriage. One was pretty straightforward, and that is a child of gay parents, both parents get to put their name on the birth certificate. There wasn't a lot of complexity to that one. There was in the argument, but that ruling seemed clear. The court agreed to hear the case of a baker in Colorado who didn't want to bake a wedding cake for a gay couple on the basis of religious freedom.
Yeah, that's an interesting one because we've seen the courts and the Supreme Court before turn away similar appeals from, for example, a photographer in New Mexico, and other courts have ruled against florists on these situations. These are businesses that have refused to provide their services for same-sex weddings, even though their states nominally don't allow that kind of discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation. This case is kind of interesting because here the baker not only argues that baking a cake for a same-sex wedding would violate his religious beliefs, he also makes a claim that it violates his First Amendment rights of free expression. He says, I'm a baker, I'm an artist. What I create are works of art. And if you force me to bake a cake for a same-sex marriage, that forces me to express a view I don't agree with. Now, the lower court, in this case, the Colorado Supreme Court, said, you know what? When they look at the cake, nobody thinks it's your message.
They're thinking about the people getting married.
Exactly. And but the baker in his defense said, you know, a couple of years ago, the Supreme Court ruled that you can't force a tattoo artist to make a tattoo with something they disagree with. That's a violation of their First Amendment expression. So the baker says the same thing ought to apply to him, and the court will hear that case in the fall.
All I know is that it's difficult to get through a conversation with you at 3:30 in the afternoon talking about cake, but I appreciate your wisdom, Pete Williams. Thanks very much. Pete Williams at the Supreme Court. Very busy day there.